One of the most common objectives of any organization is to be able to quickly and effectively manage transformation. And especially these days in the climate we're in, it's also about optimization. And supporting transformation and optimization is a very common use case for Ardoq. And we look at how we can not only leverage the traditional techniques within enterprise architecture, but the entirely new way of working across distributed teams in order to empower more rapid agility in transformation, as well as more control for those who need to have the overview. In this demonstration, we're going to quickly look at how we can think about modeling everything from strategy down to actual execution with the intention of better managing transformation. Underpinning this entire demonstration is building upon multiple different techniques that are common within enterprise architecture and that are used as products in Ardoq that you can actually deploy. So these use cases range from everything value stream mapping, business capability modeling, as well as business capability realization. The details of those techniques is not super important. The point is that it provides you a business context to how does your business work so that you can start looking at opportunities for transformation and optimization. There are many ways of communicating a strategy. Some choose to use things like a business model canvas in order to articulate what the strategies they should be pursuing. What we typically recommend, and what we also follow ourselves, is an OKR model. Modeling OKRs in Ardoq is great because you're able to actually connect the dependencies across teams and objectives and be able to link those downward into what are we actually doing in the form of initiatives and how does that impact our architecture. So we start by modeling the strategies at a high level themes and then the objectives and key results in order to keep traceability and alignment across all teams. We can drill down into each of these themes in order to understand what's underlying and how we're going to be measuring our success. If we look at one specific aspect of our strategy around operational excellence, this is really about reducing cost, improving our efficiencies, and you can see that in the representation of what key results we'll be measuring. In order to start understanding how we can actually improve on these metrics, we need to start thinking about how our business operates. We could look at this from a perspective of an ecosystem model, where we're looking at one specific product in this instance and understanding how does it go from energy production through external regulation into product distribution and sales. That's one way of articulating how does this product flow through our business and how do we generate that. Another way of thinking about this is through the eyes of, or the lens of, a value stream, where we're capturing not only those external factors, but also how are business capabilities orchestrated in order to create new products and services. This could be the foundation as well for transformation. We might see that we have new capabilities that we're not utilizing within this value stream and be able to re-articulate how we're going to go to market and build that product or service. Underpinning each of these value streams, you can drill down into the actual capabilities. Here you can start to measure as well critical attributes on those capabilities, things like cost, risk, maturity, etc. So one great way, an easy way of looking at this, especially around optimization, is to think about it from a cost perspective. In order to do this, we've actually modeled the departments or locations and the applications that are underpinning or realizing these capabilities. On each of these, we have different attributes around cost modeling. This is actually an extension of the original meta model I showed you a moment ago, where we've added our out-of-the-box calculations for IT cost management. So what we're doing is actually rolling the cost up through the layers of the architecture to the capabilities. This provides us a really accurate way of looking at where are we investing, where are we strong, and where are we immature, as well as where we could potentially optimize. Looking at the sources of that cost and how we've actually articulated that, we can actually drill down into one capability. In this case, we're looking at the sales orders capability with a quite high number. We can see all the underlying applications, what servers they're running on, and what locations they're actually hosted in. And that could be the grounds for branching off a new design, potentially a migration alternative to go into the cloud or some other cost savings opportunity. But cost is not the only way of thinking about optimization. We can also think about this in reducing of complexity and taking those two different factors into consideration at once. The great thing about Ardoq's flexibility is it allows you to model any of these attributes into one overview and utilize them in any of our visualizations. So here we see the cost on one axis and the number of applications underpinning each of these capabilities. We can actually double click and drill down and see which one of our sub-capabilities or lower level capabilities are actually quite complex and quite costly. And again, that could be a target for optimization. Cost is not the only way to think about things though. Sometimes you want to think about go-to-market and more growth and revenue generating activities. So what we recommend is actually modeling not only your strategy and key results, but also go into your initiatives so you can keep an agile road mapping overview for your architecture and understand how that's impacting things like your applications. By connecting to things like Jira or other project management tools, we can actually import all your in-flight initiatives and use those and the metadata about them in order to start analyzing how you're attributing spend and time against your strategy. To do that, though, we need to connect those initiatives to our actual OKRs. So what I'm going to do is actually jump now out of a simple Ardoq core Ardoq platform and into something that you would actually see in Discover. Discover is Ardoq's non-technical user interface. So this is for everybody else in the organization who cares about change, but doesn't necessarily have a relationship to meta modeling or architecture. In this Discover user interface, users can find permission-guided data that is tailored to their unique context and simply communicates things like impact and overview and understanding of core concepts. In this instance, what I've done is actually pretended to be a project manager who's looking at their project around implementing a chatbot. I can see what are the ongoing epics, as well as which applications those epics are impacting. The great thing is the application owners have a similar view, as well as the business owners that are in charge of that objective and key result. Getting all this data in, though, requires a lot more collaboration than simply the core architecture team. So we've talked about importing data from other tools. That's one way of really increasing the scope and connectivity, but you also need to depend on the experts that are out in the field. The great thing about Ardoq is that we can actually build automated workflows based on your architecture to involve the right people, the experts who are out there at the right time. One example of this, for example, is sending a broadcast, which is our automated workflow engine, to those individuals based on some sort of event. In this case, I am a user who is responsible for an objective. There's a deadline coming up that is potentially going to be at risk, and I'm getting notified about that. What Ardoq has done is actually calculated the delivery dates of all the epics underpinning that objective and identified if the objective is actually on track or potentially behind based on the desires for that specific objective realization. The great thing is we actually also see what applications are potentially impacted by each of these initiatives, and we can actually drill down. So we see that Ardoq has identified that this initiative is off track. It has a planned delivery date that is after our objective, and it's also impacted by this application. So let's drill into that application. By doing that, we've actually switched context. We've drilled down into the portal for this mobile app, and we see that they are actually working on 4 large initiatives, which might be an opportunity for us to start thinking about reprioritization of time or reprioritization of objective deliveries. The point here is we want to be able to involve and engage a much wider audience in order to bring the insights of alignment across our architecture to all those individuals who are making those decisions. Without that alignment overview, people are not necessarily empowered to make the right decisions about what they can control within delivery. Going back to how we can think about managing change, we can also start articulating some high-level aggregates on top of this optimization process. So, for example, looking at alignment, how many initiatives are aligned, how many are on running, what is the total spend, how is that spend distributed over OKRs or over capabilities, if they're critical capabilities or not. All that kind of information can be articulated into a dashboard, which can be shared with a stakeholder through a presentation. Or you could model it out in visualizations as well to communicate where do we have the most ongoing initiatives, where do we lacking any investment. Just great ways of looking at how we actually think about reallocating our time spent. The last thing I want to touch on is when we get into the idea of actual implementation. So we've talked a lot about strategic alignment to our initiatives and looking at how we're going to look for opportunities for transformation or optimization in order to drive change. But that is really from a top-down perspective. What about when we decide we're actually going to make a change? What happens then? What we're going to actually do is look at this from an application perspective. So we know we're going to make a change to this app. What we're going to do is we're actually going to create a branch. So in Ardoq, when you're modeling future states, when you're modeling new designs of change, you branch your data into a scenario. Ardoq scenarios is a way of you keeping a connectivity between your ever-changing ecosystem of real-time as-is data with your designs, so that your designs never become out of date or disconnected from reality, as well as you have full governance control and the benefit of data in order to highlight where changes happen and what the impact of change could be. So let's look at an example of this. We'll drill down into our scenario for removing or changing this app. And we've done some modeling where we've actually removed the app and added a new one and added some new connectivity. So if we look at the main line, this is where we started. If we look at our future state design, this is where we're ending. And if we look at our diff, we can actually get a visual diff. That would then trigger a workflow for the experts to approve that diff and go into implementation. And again, likely integrate with something like Jira so that you can actually take these designs from concept to execution. All right, and with that, we'll wrap up this example of how you can help support large-scale transformation and optimization in your business, how you can involve a much wider audience in order to ensure that you succeed, and how you can leverage data to drive those decisions and keep track of how you're performing and able to realize those benefits you set out to achieve.